Dust swirled around the small boy's worn boots as he stood outside the general store, tears cutting clean tracks down his dirt-smudged face. 7-year-old Caleb Tucker had buried his mother that morning with his own 2 hands. Now his 3 younger siblings waited in their leaky cabin, bellies empty for the 3rd day straight. The townsfolk hurried past, averting their eyes from the half-Apache child nobody wanted to claim responsibility for, all except one man. Standing in the shadows, 2 Rivers watched the scene unfold, the boy's desperation stirring memories of his own loss long ago. Could an outcast Apache, rejected by both worlds he belonged to, become the salvation this family needed? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The sun hung low in the western sky, casting long shadows across the dusty main street. 2 Rivers watched from his usual spot behind the livery stable as the townsfolk of Bitter Creek hurried to finish their business before nightfall. His weathered hands absently touched the faded cavalry button he kept in his pocket, a grim souvenir from the day his world ended. 10 winters had passed since the soldiers came to his village. 10 winters since he'd held his wife Morning Sky and their son Little Fox. The memories remained sharp as broken glass. The thunder of hooves, the crack of rifles, the screams that still haunted his dreams. He'd been hunting when it happened, returning to find only ashes and bodies, his family among them. Now, at 45, 2 Rivers existed in the margins of the white man's world, not living, merely surviving. The townspeople tolerated his presence because he worked harder than any 2 men, handling tasks no one else wanted. He fixed their leaky roofs, dug their wells, broke their wild horses. They paid him less than a white man, but it was enough for his meager needs. He slept in a small shelter at the edge of town, ate simply, spoke rarely. The saloon would not serve him. The church did not welcome him. He was a ghost, drifting through their world without belonging to it, yet he watched them, observed their ways, their cruelties, their occasional kindnesses. He had first noticed the boy 3 days ago, standing outside the general store with the same desperate look day after day. 2 Rivers recognized that expression. It was the face of someone whose world had collapsed, who hadn't yet learned how to exist in the wreckage. The Tucker woman had died. This much 2 Rivers knew from the snippets of conversation he'd overheard. Consumption, they said. No one had attended her burial. Her half-breed children were now alone, unwanted reminders of her transgression, marrying an Apache man who'd eventually abandoned her. 2 Rivers pulled his worn blanket tighter around his shoulders as the evening chill crept in. The button in his pocket seemed heavier suddenly. He had walked away from his people after the massacre, unable to bear their pity, unwilling to take another wife. The white world had no place for him, and he no longer had a place among the Apache. He belonged nowhere. The boy, Caleb was his name, moved slowly up the street, empty-handed again. Each rejection had visibly worn him down further. His small shoulders curled inward against the weight of responsibility no child should carry. When Mrs. Peterson, the baker's wife, shooed the boy away from her back door, something stirred in 2 Rivers' chest, a feeling he thought had died with his family. He followed at a distance as Caleb trudged out of town, toward the shabby cabin near the creek. The boy's boots were falling apart, several sizes too large and stuffed with rags to make them fit. His father's boots, perhaps. From the ridge above the cabin, 2 Rivers watched as Caleb entered the dilapidated structure. Through the glassless window, he could see the boy greeting 3 smaller children. The youngest was just a baby, thin and listless in the arms of a little girl, not much bigger herself. Hunger had a smell. 2 Rivers recognized it from the lean years of his youth. It radiated from that cabin like heat from a stove. He reached into his pocket again, feeling the smooth metal of the button against his calloused fingertips. He had survived when his family did not, had carried the guilt of that survival for a decade, had existed without purpose or connection. The sound of a child crying drifted up from the cabin, a thin, weak wail that spoke of more than momentary distress. Two Rivers closed his eyes. When he opened them again, his decision was made. He would return to his shelter, gather what little food he had, and bring it to these children. Tomorrow he would find more work, earn more coins. It would not be enough, but it would be something. Perhaps this was why the spirits had kept him alive when he'd prayed for death. Perhaps this was his purpose now. The cavalry button slipped from his fingers, falling to the earth. Two Rivers did not bend to retrieve it. Caleb pushed open the warped wooden door of the cabin, wincing at the familiar squeal of rusted hinges. The smell hit him first, dampness from the leaking roof, the sourness of unwashed bodies, and beneath it all, the lingering scent of illness that hadn't fully dissipated since Ma passed. Caleb. Emma's voice cut through the gloom. At 5 years old, she'd appointed herself second in command, taking charge of the younger ones while he searched for help. "Did you get anything?" He shook his head, unable to meet her hopeful eyes. "Not today, Em." In the corner, 3-year-old James sat on the dirt floor, methodically moving pebbles from one small pile to another. He'd barely spoken since they'd buried Ma 3 days ago. "Lily's been crying," Emma reported, her voice trying to sound grown-up but wavering slightly. "I think she's hungry again." The baby lay swaddled in their mother's shawl, her face pinched and pale. At 10 months, Lily had already survived more hardship than some grown folks. Born early, she'd always been small, but now her cheeks had hollowed, and her cries had weakened to mewling sounds that frightened Caleb more than screaming ever could. He knelt beside the straw mattress where Lily lay and touched her forehead. "Still too warm despite the chill in the cabin. I saved some of the water," Emma said, pointing to a tin cup on the rickety table. Their last piece of real furniture besides the bed they all shared. "Good job." He forced a smile for his sister's benefit. "Why don't you heat it up? We can make pine needle tea like Ma showed us." While Emma busied herself with the small fire in their makeshift hearth, Caleb rummaged through the single trunk containing all their worldly possessions. Beneath a stack of threadbare clothes, his fingers found the small wooden horse, intricately carved with flowing mane and alert ears, its surface smooth from years of handling. Pa had made it before he left, back when he still made promises about returning with gold enough to buy them a proper ranch. That was 5 years ago, right after James was born. The last letter had come 3 years back, full of excuses and empty pledges. Horsey. James had materialized at his elbow, eyes fixed on the carved toy. "Yeah, buddy. Want to hold it for a while?" James nodded, small fingers closing reverently around the wooden figure. It was the only toy they possessed, passed between them according to an unspoken schedule. "When's Ma coming back?" James asked, not for the first time. Emma froze by the fire, her back to them. "She's not, James. Remember what I told you? Ma's with the angels now." The explanation felt hollow, even to Caleb's ears. "But who's going to take care of us?" "I am," Caleb said firmly, though his stomach knotted with uncertainty. "And Emma's helping. And you're being real brave looking after Lily sometimes." James seemed to consider this, then wandered back to his pebble piles, wooden horse clutched to his chest. Emma brought the warm cup of pine needle tea, and Caleb helped Lily take small sips. The baby accepted the liquid without her usual fussing. Another bad sign. "I'm going to try the ranch tomorrow," Caleb decided aloud. "Mr. Sullivan might have work I can do. Something small." "You're too little for ranch work," Emma said doubtfully. "Ma always said, 'Ma's not here.'" The words came out sharper than he intended. Seeing Emma's lip tremble, he softened his tone. "I'm sorry, Em, but we need food. And nobody in town's going to help us." Through the window, Caleb noticed movement on the ridge above their cabin. A lone figure stood watching, too distant to identify clearly in the fading light. Probably just a traveler passing through, he thought. Or maybe one of the townspeople coming to tell them they needed to leave the cabin that had been their home for as long as Caleb could remember. "I'm scared." "Caleb," Emma whispered, leaning against his side. "Me too," he admitted, putting his arm around her thin shoulders. "But we've got each other, and Ma always said that's what matters most." As darkness settled over the cabin, Caleb coaxed his siblings to bed. They huddled together for warmth beneath their single blanket. Lily nestled between Emma and James. Only when their breathing had deepened into sleep did Caleb allow himself to cry, silent tears tracking down his cheeks as he stared into the dying embers of their meager fire. Outside, unbeknownst to the children, two rivers watched over the cabin through the night, a solitary sentinel against the darkness. Dawn broke cold and grey over the Tucker cabin. Caleb had been awake for hours, listening to his siblings' hungry whimpers in their sleep. The tin cup on the table held only a spoonful of cornmeal, not enough to make even a small porridge. A sound outside snapped him to attention. Footsteps, too heavy to be a small animal. Caleb grabbed the rusted poker from beside the fireplace, the closest thing to a weapon they possessed. "Emma!" he whispered urgently. "Take James and Lily to the corner and stay quiet." His sister obeyed instantly, gathering the younger children and huddling behind the trunk, her eyes wide with fear. The footsteps stopped outside their door. Caleb's heart hammered against his ribs as he positioned himself between the entrance and his siblings, poker raised. Instead of the door opening, a thud sounded on the porch. Then the footsteps retreated. Caleb waited, counting slowly to 100 as Ma had taught him when he was frightened. When no further sounds came, he eased the door open a crack. A burlap sack sat on their doorstep. Cautiously, Caleb poked it with the fire iron, half expecting a trap. The sack slumped sideways, revealing a loaf of dark bread, strips of dried meat, and a small pouch of coffee. "Food," he breathed. Emma appeared at his shoulder. "Where'd it come from?" Movement caught Caleb's eye. The Indian from town, the one they called Two Rivers, stood at the edge of the clearing, watching. His face remained impassive, but his eyes held something Caleb couldn't name. "Him." Caleb nodded toward the figure. "The Apache." Emma clutched his sleeve. "Ma said we shouldn't take charity. Ma also said we shouldn't let Lily starve," Caleb countered, already reaching for the sack. Pride was a luxury they could no longer afford. He dragged the provisions inside while keeping a wary eye on Two Rivers, who made no move to approach but didn't leave either. The aroma of the bread, still slightly warm, filled the cabin. James emerged from hiding, followed by Emma carrying Lily. "Food!" James exclaimed, reaching for the bread. "Slow down," Caleb cautioned, breaking off small pieces for each of them. "Eat it slowly or you'll get sick." While his siblings ate, Caleb returned to the doorway. Two Rivers remained at his post, patient as stone. "Thank you," Caleb called, the words feeling strange in his mouth. He'd said them countless times in town, always met with rejection. "But we can't pay you." Two Rivers approached slowly, his movements deliberate, hands visible at his sides. When he reached the edge of the porch, he stopped. "No payment," he said, his voice deep and accented. "Children should eat." Caleb studied him suspiciously. "What do you want, then? To help? Why?" Two Rivers didn't answer immediately. His gaze moved past Caleb to the fresh mound of earth behind the cabin, Ma's grave, marked only with a crude wooden cross. "I will bring more food later," Two Rivers said finally. "A medicine for the baby." Before Caleb could respond, Two Rivers turned and walked toward the woods. He returned minutes later, carrying an armful of firewood, which he stacked neatly beside the cabin. The morning passed in a strange dance. Two Rivers working silently around the property, Caleb watching from the doorway, neither acknowledging the other directly. The Apache repaired a broken window shutter, patched a hole in the roof, and cleared debris from the small stream behind the cabin. Emma ventured out first, curiosity overcoming caution. She carried an empty flour sack, one of many that had once held the staple they could no longer afford. The faded blue lettering of Carson's Mill Fine Flour was still visible on the rough fabric. "Mister," she called, holding out the sack to Two Rivers. "We saved these. Ma said they'd be good for making clothes someday." Two Rivers accepted the offering with formal gravity, examining the fabric. "Good material," he agreed. strong. He spread the sack on a flat rock, then pulled a small knife from his belt. With precise movements, he cut the sack along the seams, transforming it into a flat piece of fabric. From his pocket, he produced a bone needle and sinew thread. Emma watched, transfixed, as his weathered hands worked the fabric, folding and stitching with unexpected dexterity. Within minutes, he had fashioned a simple cap. "For the baby," he explained, handing it to Emma. "Keep her head warm." Emma took the cap reverently, then dashed back to the cabin to try it on Lily. By midday, James had joined his sister outside, observing Two Rivers from a safe distance. Only Caleb maintained his vigil at the doorway, unwilling to fully trust this unexpected assistance. When Two Rivers finally approached the grave, Caleb tensed. The Apache stood silently before the crude marker, head bowed. Then he began to sing, a low, melodic chant that made the hair on Caleb's arms stand up. "What's he doing?" Emma whispered, returning to Caleb's side. "Saying goodbye to Ma, I think," Caleb answered, something tight and painful squeezing his chest. The song ended. Two Rivers turned to find all three children watching him. "I will come back tomorrow," he said simply. Two Rivers entered Carson's general store with quiet purpose, ignoring the immediate hush that fell over the room. The bell above the door seemed to ring longer than necessary, announcing his presence to those who hadn't already noticed. "Morning," he said to Mr. Carson, who stood rigid behind the counter, spectacles perched on his nose, ledger open before him. "What do you want?" Carson asked, not bothering with pleasantries. Two Rivers placed 3 rabbit pelts on the counter. "Trade for food." From the corner, Mrs. Hollister sniffed loudly and turned away. Her friend Mrs. Palmer leaned close to whisper something that made both women glance at Two Rivers with undisguised contempt. "Heard you've been spending time out." "At the Tucker place," Carson said, examining the pelts with exaggerated care. "Those half-breed children still there, then?" Two Rivers nodded once, his expression unchanged. "Shame about their mother," Carson continued, not sounding particularly sorry. "County office should be sending someone for those children soon enough. Take them somewhere proper." Two Rivers didn't respond, his gaze steady on the shopkeeper. "I'll give you a pound of beans, half-pound of salt pork, and a small sack of cornmeal for these," Carson offered, pushing the pelts aside. "Take it or leave it." "And milk," Two Rivers added. "For the baby." Carson's eyebrows rose. "Milk costs extra." Two Rivers reached into his pocket and placed 3 tarnished coins on the counter, nearly everything he had. Carson scooped them up quickly. While the shopkeeper gathered the supplies, the door opened again. Sheriff Dan Haynes entered, thumbs hooked in his belt loops, taking in the scene with practiced casualness. The sheriff was a lean man in his 50s, with a neatly trimmed grey mustache and eyes that noticed more than they revealed. Unlike most in town, he acknowledged Two Rivers with a slight nod. "Morning, Sheriff," Carson called. "Coffee?" "Not today, Henry." The sheriff strolled to the counter. "Just checking in. Everything all right here?" "Just fine," Carson replied, bagging Two Rivers' purchases. "Just concluding some business." "Wait." The wall behind the counter hung a yellowed broadsheet that caught Two Rivers' attention. The faded print still clearly showed a drawing of an Apache warrior, rifle raised, standing over fallen settlers. The bold letters proclaimed 500 reward for Apache raiders and listed crimes from a decade earlier, hundreds of miles away. Sheriff Haynes followed Two Rivers' gaze to the poster. Something like embarrassment flickered across his weathered face, but he made no comment. "Thought you might want to know," the sheriff said instead, addressing Two Rivers directly. "Widow. Parker's been stirring up talk about those Tucker children. Says it ain't right, them living out there alone." Two Rivers accepted his purchases from Carson. "They're not alone," Mrs. Hollister gasped dramatically. Mrs. Palmer's hand flew to her throat. "You can't mean that Indian is looking after white children." Mrs. Hollister exclaimed to the room at large, as if Two Rivers weren't present. "Half-Apache," Two Rivers corrected quietly. "That don't make them yours," Carson interjected. "Their daddy was some drifter from up north." Ran off years ago. Henry, the sheriff warned, his tone suggesting this wasn't information to be shared so freely. Two Rivers gathered his goods and moved toward the door, but Mrs. Palmer stepped into his path. "It's unnatural," she declared, chin lifted defiantly. "Those children need Christian raising. My sister runs a fine orphanage in Tucson. They take in all sorts, even half-breeds. They have a home," Two Rivers said simply, sidestepping her. Outside on the boardwalk, Sheriff Haynes caught up to him. "Hold up there." Two Rivers paused, his face impassive. "What exactly are your intentions with those children?" Haynes asked, keeping his voice low. "They need food, shelter, care." Two Rivers met the sheriff's gaze steadily. "I provide." "That's not how folks here will see it. I know." The sheriff studied him for a long moment. "That baby needs more than you can give her." "I know this too. I will do what I can." Haynes sighed, pushing back his hat. "I'll need to ride out there, see the situation for myself." Two Rivers nodded. "Tomorrow, I will be there." "You've got no legal claim to those children," Haynes said, not unkindly. "You understand that. I make no claim. They need help. I help." A wry smile touched the sheriff's lips. "Simple as that, huh?" "Yes." As Two Rivers turned to leave, the sheriff added, "That poster in there, it's from the Apache wars down south. Different band entirely from your people." Two Rivers paused. "To them, all Apache are the same." "Not to everyone," Haynes replied. Two Rivers continued down the street, aware of eyes following him from windows and doorways. Near the edge of town, a young woman stepped out of the millinery shop. Unlike the others, she offered a small smile. "Mr. Rivers," she called softly. He stopped, surprised at being addressed respectfully. "I'm Ruth Donovan," she said. "I knew Sarah Tucker. She was kind to me when others weren't." She hesitated, then added, "Those children, are they truly all right?" "They are alive," Two Rivers answered honestly. "Need more than food," Mrs. Donovan nodded, understanding. "I have some things that might help. Children's clothes my Thomas has outgrown." "A blanket or two would be welcome," Two Rivers said. "I'll bring them out tomorrow." "If that's acceptable." Two Rivers nodded his thanks and continued toward the cabin, carrying more than supplies in his arms. He carried the weight of the town's hostility, the sheriff's warning, and the unexpected kindness of a stranger, all of which would shape whatever future awaited him and the children in his care. 5 days had passed since Two Rivers first brought food to the Tucker cabin. 5 days of quiet routine establishing itself like tentative roots taking hold in uncertain soil. Each morning, Two Rivers arrived as the sun crested the eastern hills. Each evening, he departed as shadows lengthened, returning to his shelter at the edge of town. The hours between were filled with the work of survival, repairs to the cabin, hunting, teaching Caleb to set snares, showing Emma how to prepare simple foods. On this morning, Two Rivers found Caleb already outside, awkwardly chopping kindling with an axe too large for his small frame. "Here," Two Rivers said, demonstrating the proper grip. "Let the weight do the work." Caleb adjusted his hands, his movements mirroring the Apache's instruction. The boy still maintained a careful distance, but the outright suspicion had begun to fade from his eyes. Inside the cabin, Emma hummed softly as she combed baby Lily's fine hair with gentle strokes. The small silver hairbrush in her hand caught the morning light, its ornate handle engraved with vines and flowers, clearly a cherished possession from better times. "Ma's brush," Emma explained, noticing Two Rivers watching. "She said every lady needs to look proper even in hard times." Two Rivers nodded, understanding the importance of maintaining dignity amidst poverty. "Your mother was wise. She used to brush my hair every night, 100 strokes exactly," Emma continued, her small face solemn with memory. "Now I do Lily's, so she won't forget Ma." James sat nearby, playing with a stack of smooth stones Two Rivers had brought him the day before. The boy had yet to speak directly to the Apache, but he no longer hid when Two Rivers entered the cabin. "Sheriff coming today," Two Rivers reminded Caleb as they carried the chopped wood inside. Caleb's expression hardened. "What if he tries to take us away?" "We will speak truth. Your home is here." "But he might not listen," Caleb insisted. "Grown-ups don't usually care what kids want." Two Rivers considered this. "Sheriff Haynes is fair man. He will see you are cared for by an Indian." Caleb's bluntness held no malice, only the pragmatism of a child who had learned early that the world operated by rules that rarely favored people like him or Two Rivers. "By someone who keeps you together," Two Rivers corrected. "This matters most." The conversation halted as Emma approached with Lily in her arms. The baby's cheeks had gained some color over the past days, though she remained worryingly thin. "She won't take her milk," Emma said, concern furrowing her brow. Two Rivers gently took the infant, cradling her with practiced ease that surprised the older children. He examined Lily carefully, noting her flushed skin and the slight wheeze in her breathing. "Fever again," he said. "Needs medicine." From his pocket, he produced a small pouch of dried herbs. "Make tea, very weak. Cool before giving." "What is it?" Caleb asked, suspicious once more. "Plants that grow by the creek. Help breathing, cool fever. How do you know it won't hurt her?" "My wife." Two Rivers paused, the words coming with difficulty. "She knew plants, taught me. For our son." This revelation hung in the air. It was the first personal information Two Rivers had shared. "You have a son?" Emma asked, eyes wide. "Had," Two Rivers corrected quietly. "Long ago." Caleb's expression shifted subtly, the first flicker of genuine empathy. "What happened?" "Soldiers came to our village." Two Rivers busied himself with preparing the herbal tea, his movements precise and controlled. "Many died. My wife, my son. I was away hunting." The simple words carried the weight of immeasurable loss. Even young James looked up from his play, sensing the gravity of the moment. "That's why you help us," Caleb said. Not a question, but a realization. Two Rivers met the boy's gaze directly. "Perhaps. All children deserve care." The sound of approaching hoofbeats interrupted further conversation. Sheriff Haynes had arrived, his horse's bridle jingling as he dismounted outside. Emma hurriedly smoothed her dress and placed the silver hairbrush on the small shelf where they kept their few treasures. Caleb positioned himself protectively near his siblings, shoulders squared. Two Rivers stepped back, allowing the children to present themselves to the visitor. This was their home, their family. He was merely a helper in their eyes, though something in his chest ached at the thought of these children being taken elsewhere. Sheriff Haynes filled the doorway, removing his hat as he entered. His gaze took in the scene, the swept floor, the mended window, the cooking pot bubbling over the fire, the children, wary but clean and fed. "Well now," he said, surprise evident in his tone. "Things are looking considerably better than I expected." "Mr. Rivers fixed the roof," Emma volunteered, her natural friendliness emerging. "And he's teaching Caleb to hunt, and he made medicine for Lily." The sheriff's eyebrows rose as he looked to Two Rivers, who remained silent, letting the children speak for themselves. "Is that so?" Haynes asked, addressing Caleb directly. "And how do you feel about that, son?" Caleb hesitated, glancing between Two Rivers and the sheriff. "We're managing all right," he said carefully. "Better than before." The sheriff crouched to be at eye level with the children. "And you understand that Mr. Rivers has no legal right to be caring for you?" "He's not trying to be our pa, if that's what you mean," Caleb replied, with surprising maturity. "He's just helping until..." The unfinished sentence hung in the air. Until what? Until their father returned? Until they were old enough to manage alone? Until someone else decided their fate? Sheriff Haynes straightened, turning to Two Rivers. "I need to speak with you outside." As Two Rivers followed the sheriff onto the porch, he felt Emma slip something into his hand. The silver hairbrush, its weight unexpectedly heavy for such a small object. "For Lily's fever," she whispered. "Ma always said silver keeps evil spirits away." Sheriff Haynes leaned against the porch railing, rolling a cigarette with practiced fingers. The late afternoon sun caught the tarnished star pinned to his vest, a symbol of authority that had seen better days. Much like the man who wore it. "I've got to be straight with you." "Rivers," Haynes said, striking a match against the rail. "County office is sending someone next week. Fellow named Peterson. Works for the Territorial Orphanage in Tucson." Two Rivers absorbed this news without visible reaction, though something cold settled in his chest. "What will happen?" he asked. Haynes exhaled a stream of smoke, choosing his words carefully. "Official policy is to place orphaned children in proper homes, or the orphanage if no suitable families are found. These children have a home. A home needs parents, according to the law." Haynes tapped ash from his cigarette. "Look, I appreciate what you've done here. Place is cleaner, children are fed. But Peterson won't see it that way. All he'll see is 4 white children, half-Apache," Two Rivers corrected. "Living with an Indian," Haynes continued as if uninterrupted. "He'll have papers authorizing him to take them. Legal papers I can't ignore." Inside the cabin, Emma's laughter filtered through the thin walls as she played some game with James. The sound made Two Rivers' resolution strengthen. "How long?" he asked. 6 days. "Maybe 7. Two Rivers nodded, his mind working through possibilities. "The father, he signed papers. Birth certificates list him as father. Fellow named William Tucker. Married to Sarah proper in a church and everything, which surprised some folks. But he's been gone 5 years at least. Law considers them abandoned. Children say he writes sometimes." Haynes shrugged. "Doesn't matter. He's not here, and you've got no legal standing. Not being kin, and the unspoken reality hung between them, and being Apache." Two Rivers stared across the small clearing surrounding the cabin. The repairs he'd made, the garden he'd started with Emma, the rabbit snares he'd taught Caleb to set, all would be meaningless once the children were taken. What if... Two Rivers hesitated, then met the sheriff's gaze directly. "What if someone with standing makes claim?" Haynes raised an eyebrow. "You know someone?" "Mrs. Donovan. She brings clothes, food. Says she knew the mother. Ruth's a good woman, but she's got 3 young'uns of her own and a husband who works the railroad. Gone weeks at a time." Haynes shook his head. "Don't think she could take on 4 more. Two Rivers fell silent. Options dwindling. The cabin door creaked open and Caleb stepped onto the porch. His face set in the determined expression that made him look older than his 7 years. "We're not going to any orphanage," he stated flatly. "Emma heard you talking." Haynes sighed, dropping his cigarette and crushing it under his boot. "Son, sometimes we don't get to choose." "Ma chose," Caleb interrupted. "Before she died. She said if anything happened, Two Rivers would look after us." Two Rivers looked sharply at the boy, surprise evident in his normally impassive face. "That true?" Haynes asked Two Rivers. "First I hear of this." Caleb's chin lifted stubbornly. "She told me, when she was real sick. Said Two Rivers was a good man who'd help us if we asked proper." Haynes studied the boy, weighing the claim. "Your ma and Rivers knew each other. She traded with him sometimes. Eggs and milk for firewood. Said he was fair when others weren't." The sheriff's weathered face revealed his skepticism. "That's not the same as appointing him guardian, son," she said. Caleb faltered, then straightened his shoulders. "She said sometimes family is who takes care of you, not just blood." Emma appeared in the doorway, clutching James's hand. "It's true, Sheriff. Ma told us stories about Two Rivers people. Said they were proud and honorable." Two Rivers remained silent, recognizing the children's desperate attempt to stay together, to stay home. Haynes rubbed his jaw thoughtfully, then reached inside his vest to withdraw a small notebook and pencil. The pages were worn, filled with the sheriff's cramped handwriting, a record of the small dramas and minor crimes that made up his jurisdiction. "Here's what I can do," he said finally. "I can note in my official report that Sarah Tucker expressed wishes for Two Rivers to care for her children in the event of her death. It's not legally binding, but it might give us leverage with Peterson." Hope flickered in the children's eyes. "Beyond that," Haynes continued, making notes as he spoke, "I can approve a temporary arrangement. 2 weeks. Rivers stays here as caretaker. I check in regular to ensure welfare of the children. And after 2 weeks..." "No," Two Rivers asked. "We reassess." Maybe by then we'll have a more permanent solution. Haynes looked up from his notebook. But I'm warning you, this is highly irregular. If any harm comes to these children, or if conditions deteriorate... We understand, Caleb said quickly. Two Rivers stays here? In the cabin? Emma asked, hope brightening her voice. Haynes nodded. That's the condition. Full-time supervision. Two Rivers considered the implications of this arrangement. His life of solitude would end. He would be responsible for 4 children. Truly responsible, not just helping from a distance. If Peterson arrives before 2 weeks pass, he asked. I'll do what I can to delay him, Haynes replied. Can't promise more than that. The sheriff closed his notebook and tucked it away, adjusting the worn star on his vest as he prepared to leave. I'll be back in 3 days to check on things. Any problems before then, you send Caleb to town. As Haynes mounted his horse, he paused. Looking back at the unlikely group gathered on the porch, the stoic Apache and the 4 children of various ages, bound together by circumstance and necessity, Rivers, he called. What you're taking on here, it won't be easy. Town's already talking. 2 Rivers nodded once. I know. The sheriff touched the brim of his hat in acknowledgement, then rode away, leaving behind a fragile opportunity and the weight of his tarnished stars. Authority as the only shield between this makeshift family and separation. 2 Rivers arrived. At dawn, with his few possessions wrapped in a blanket. The children watched from the doorway as he secured his old Mustang in the lean-to beside the cabin, a weathered horse that matched its owner in quiet dignity and resilience. You'll sleep there, Caleb said, pointing to a corner where he'd arranged a pile of clean straw covered with a threadbare quilt. It ain't much. It is enough, 2 Rivers replied, placing his bundle beside the makeshift bed. The cabin felt smaller with all 5 of them inside. A single room, with the cooking area at one end, the children's shared bed at the other, and precious little space between. The morning light filtering through the repaired window revealed dust motes dancing in the air and the modest improvements 2 Rivers had already made to their living conditions. What now? Emma asked, holding Lily on her hip. The baby looked better, her fever finally broken after 2 days of 2 Rivers' herbal remedies. 2 Rivers surveyed the cramped quarters. First we make proper beds, then more firewood before winter. From his bundle he withdrew a hunting knife with a bone handle, worn smooth from years of use. The blade gleamed, well-maintained despite its age. He held it out to Caleb. To work with, he explained. Not to play. Caleb's eyes widened as he accepted the knife. This is yours to use, 2 Rivers corrected. Learn to care for it. Keep it sharp. The boy tested the edge with his thumb, careful not to cut himself. What will we make first? Beds for your brother and sisters. Then fishing spears. Winter is coming. The day passed in a flurry of industry. 2 Rivers led the children into the woods, showing them how to select proper saplings for bed frames. Caleb worked alongside him, mimicking his precise cutting techniques, while Emma gathered pine boughs for mattresses and James collected fallen nuts and berries. By midday, they'd assembled a frame for Emma and Lily. By evening, James had his own small bed. The physical labor established a rhythm to their interaction, a purpose that transcended the awkwardness of their new living arrangement. As dusk approached, 2 Rivers built up the fire and prepared a stew from the rabbits Caleb had helped snare that morning. The rich aroma filled the cabin, making even Lily coo with anticipation. Ma used to sing while she cooked, Emma said, setting out their few chipped plates. Do your people have songs for cooking? 2 Rivers nodded. Many songs. For planting, hunting, cooking, all things. Will you teach us? Her request came without hesitation, the natural curiosity of a child who hadn't yet learned to be wary of cultural differences. 2 Rivers considered, then began a low melodic chant, a cooking song his wife had sung in their lodge. The unfamiliar sounds made James giggle at first, but soon the children were attempting to mimic the rhythm, creating an imperfect but earnest chorus. As they ate, Caleb suddenly asked, "What do we call you now?" "Sheriff said you're our caretaker." 2 Rivers looked up from his bowl. "My name is 2 Rivers. I know that, Caleb said, impatience edging his voice. But are you, should we say you're our guardian or what? The question revealed the boy's deeper concern. How to explain this unusual arrangement to others, how to define this new relationship. I am Two Rivers, he repeated simply. I care for you. Names matter less than actions. Caleb seemed unsatisfied with this answer, but Emma nodded as if it made perfect sense. After dinner, as Two Rivers taught Emma how to preserve the leftover stew, Caleb disappeared outside. He returned an hour later, his expression guarded as he approached Two Rivers. Found this, he said, holding out a small pouch. Under the floorboards, where Ma kept important things. Two Rivers took the pouch, surprised by its weight. Opening it revealed several coins and a folded paper. Ma's savings, Caleb explained, for emergencies. And that's the deed to the cabin and land. Pa's name is on it. Two Rivers carefully refolded the paper without reading it. This belongs to you and your siblings. But we need supplies, Caleb argued. And if you're staying, you should know about it. The boy's willingness to share this secret cash marked a significant step in trust. Two Rivers recognized the gesture for what it was. Caleb acknowledging their shared fate. We will use only what is needed, Two Rivers promised, returning the pouch. You keep this safe. Later, as the children settled into their new beds, Two Rivers sat by the fire, knife in hand, working on a small piece of wood. The familiar motion of carving calmed his mind as he contemplated the path ahead. He had not lived with others since losing his family, had not been responsible for children, especially not children whose very presence in his care would provoke hostility from the town. Yet here he was, committed to this course. The hunting knife gleamed in the firelight as he turned it, using the blade to smooth a rough edge on his carving. This knife had sustained him through years of solitary survival. Now it would help build a home for 4 children who had no one else. From her bed, Emma watched him through half-closed eyes. "Are you making something?" she whispered, careful not to wake the others. Two Rivers nodded, showing her the emerging shape, a small wooden horse, similar to the one James treasured. "So they don't have to share," he explained softly. Emma smiled, sleep already reclaiming her. "You'll still be here when we wake up?" The question held a vulnerability that tugged at something long dormant in Two Rivers' heart. "Yes," he promised, "I will be here." The trip to town couldn't be postponed any longer. Their supplies were dwindling, and Lily needed proper milk, not the watered-down concoction Two Rivers had managed to create from preserved goods. 5 days into their new arrangement, he hitched the Mustang to the rickety wagon he'd repaired and helped the children climb aboard. "Remember," he told them as the wagon creaked toward town, "stay close." Caleb nodded solemnly, understanding the unspoken concern. Emma had dressed the younger ones in their cleanest clothes and had attempted to tame her own unruly hair with the silver brush. Two Rivers himself had donned his least worn shirt, small preparations for the scrutiny they would face. Bitter Creek appeared much as it always did on a Thursday morning. Wagons lined the main street, farmers and ranchers in town for weekly supplies. The general store bustled with activity, and women gathered in clusters, exchanging news and gossip. Two Rivers guided the wagon to a post outside Carson's store. The casual conversation around them faltered as people noticed the unusual group, the Apache man and the 4 Tucker children, arriving together like a proper family. "Stay in the wagon," Two Rivers instructed, helping Emma down with Lily in her arms. "Caleb comes with me. James stays with you." Inside the store, the reaction was immediate. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Mr. Carson's perpetual frown deepened. Mrs. Hollister, in the midst of selecting fabric, gasped audibly. "Need supplies?" Two Rivers said to Carson, ignoring the stares. He handed over the list Emma had carefully written in her childish script. Carson took the paper between 2 fingers, as if it might contaminate him. "This is quite a lot. For 5 people. For 2 weeks. 5. Carson repeated, looking pointedly at Caleb, who stood stiffly beside Two Rivers. "Sheriff Haynes approved," Caleb said, his voice impressively steady. "Two Rivers is our caretaker now. This announcement sent a ripple through the store. Mrs. Hollister abandoned her fabric selection and hurried toward the door. Clearly eager to spread the news, Carson began gathering the requested items with obvious reluctance. "Payment up front," he said, a departure from his usual practice of tallying at the end. Two Rivers placed several of the coins from Sarah Tucker's savings on the counter. Carson counted them twice before continuing. As they waited, the door opened again. Mrs. Abigail Parker entered, her imposing figure clad in somber black despite the heat. As treasurer of the Ladies' Aid Society and widow of the town's founding minister, she wielded considerable influence in Bitter Creek. Her gaze fell immediately on Two Rivers and Caleb. "So it's true," she said, her voice carrying through the store. "The Indian has taken over the Tucker place." Two Rivers remained silent, but Caleb stiffened beside him. "He's helping us, ma'am," the boy said. "Until our PR comes back." Mrs. Parker approached, her expression a mixture of disapproval and what she likely considered Christian concern. "Child, your father has been gone for years. It's time you and your siblings were placed with a proper family." From her reticule, she withdrew a folded paper, a church bulletin printed on cheap yellow paper. She handed it to Caleb, though her words were clearly meant for Two Rivers. "We're having a special meeting at the church Sunday after services, regarding the welfare of the Tucker children. Sheriff Haynes has been informed." Caleb stared at the bulletin, his face flushing. The paper announced in bold type, "Special meeting concerning the orphans of our community and the Christian duty to protect them." Two Rivers gently took the bulletin from Caleb's trembling hands, scanning the text with outward calm despite the anger kindling within him. "Children are well," he said simply. "Safe, fed. They need more than food, Mr. Rivers," Mrs. Parker replied. "They need proper spiritual guidance, an education, a future in civilized society." "Got that too," Caleb interjected. "Two Rivers teaches us reading from Ma's Bible, and useful things, hunting, fishing, making things." Mrs. Parker's lips thinned to a disapproving line. "A heathen teaching from the good book? I find that hard to believe." The confrontation was drawing an audience. The customers lingered, watching the exchange with undisguised interest. Mrs. Parker, a new voice, interjected. Ruth Donovan had entered unnoticed during the conversation. "Those children look healthier than they have in months. Cleaner, too." "That's hardly the point, Ruth," Mrs. Parker replied dismissively. "The arrangement is unnatural. The territorial authorities will never approve it." "The territorial authorities aren't here," Mrs. Donovan countered. "Those children are." And they were starving before Mr. Rivers stepped in. Two Rivers placed a hand on Caleb's shoulder, steering him toward the counter where Carson had finished assembling their supplies. He paid the remainder of the bill and began loading the goods into a crate. "Sunday after church," Mrs. Parker called after them. "The decent folks of this town will decide what's best for those children." Outside, Emma's worried face greeted them. "What happened?" Everyone staring. Two Rivers loaded the supplies into the wagon without answering. Caleb climbed up beside his siblings, his expression troubled. "Town meeting," he finally explained to Emma. "About us. They want to send us away." "No!" Emma clutched Lily tighter. "We won't go." As Two Rivers untied the Mustang, Sheriff Haynes approached, looking uncomfortable but determined. "Heard there was a disturbance," he said quietly to Two Rivers. "No disturbance. Just talk." The sheriff glanced at the church bulletin, now tucked in Two Rivers' pocket. "Abigail's been busy, I see. Been trying to slow her down, but she's got the minister's ear." "What will happen at this meeting?" Two Rivers asked. Haynes sighed. "Nothing binding. But if enough respected citizens voice concerns, it could speed up Peterson's visit from the territorial office." "We have time? A few days at least." "I'll do what I can." The sheriff looked at the children in the wagon. "How are they faring?" "Ask them," Two Rivers suggested. Haynes directed his question to Caleb. "You doing all right out there, son?" Caleb nodded firmly. "Yes, sir. Two Rivers is teaching us things. Useful things. We're not hungry anymore. And he fixed our roof," Emma added, "and made beds for everyone. And he knows stories about the stars." The sheriff's weathered face softened slightly. "That so?" James, who rarely spoke to strangers, piped up unexpectedly. "He made me a horse, like Pa's but better." Two Rivers felt a strange warmth at this simple defense from the children. They had become his advocates as much as he had become their protector. "You'll be at this meeting?" he asked Haynes. "Have to be. Official capacity." The sheriff adjusted his hat. "Might be best if you stayed at the cabin, though. Your presence would only inflame certain parties." Two Rivers understood. His absence would allow cooler heads to prevail, if there were any to be found in Bitter Creek when it came to an Apache raising white children. As they left town, the yellow church bulletin seemed to burn in Two Rivers' pocket, a tangible reminder that their fragile arrangement hung by a thread, subject to the whims and prejudices of those who had never set foot in their cabin or witnessed the slow healing taking place within its walls. The storm arrived without warning, clouds gathering over the mountains and sweeping down into the valley with startling speed. By nightfall, rain lashed against the cabin windows, and wind howled through the cracks Two Rivers hadn't yet sealed. "Will the roof hold?" Emma asked, glancing nervously at the ceiling where water had once poured through. "Yes," Two Rivers assured her. "New patches are strong." They huddled close to the fire, the winds moaning, creating an eerie backdrop to their evening meal. Even Lily seemed to sense the tension, fussing in Emma's arms until Two Rivers took her, cradling her against his chest, where she finally settled. James had retreated into himself again, a common response when he felt threatened. The day's trip to town and the hostile reactions had affected him deeply. He sat near Two Rivers' feet, methodically lining up small stones he'd collected, his eyes vacant. A tremendous crack of thunder shook the cabin, making them all jump. James began to cry silently, tears streaming down his face. "It's just the sky spirits talking," Two Rivers said gently, reaching down to rest a hand on the boy's shoulder. "They cannot hurt you inside." "Ma used to say it was angels bowling," Emma offered, moving to comfort her brother. "Remember, James?" The boy nodded, but continued crying. Two Rivers handed Lily back to Emma and added another log to the fire. The flames leapt higher, pushing back the shadows and warming the small space. Outside, the storm intensified, rain now coming sideways to batter the western wall. "Perhaps a story," Two Rivers suggested, noting how all the children looked to him with sudden interest. Storytelling was still new territory in their evolving relationship. "A scary one?" Caleb asked, trying to sound brave despite the anxiety evident in his posture. "No," Two Rivers decided, looking at James. "A story of creation. How things came to be." He settled back, searching for words in English to convey tales usually told in Apache. As he began the story of how Coyote brought fire to the people, James gradually stopped crying and edged closer, his tears drying on his cheeks. The storm provided dramatic accompaniment, thunder punctuating key moments, wind sighing during quieter passages. Two Rivers' deep voice filled the cabin, weaving images of a world where animals spoke and the earth was young. By the story's end, James had fallen asleep against Two Rivers' leg, and Emma's eyelids drooped heavily. Only Caleb remained fully alert, watching Two Rivers with an unreadable expression. "Time for sleep," Two Rivers announced, carefully lifting James and carrying him to his bed. Once the younger children were settled, Two Rivers returned to the fire, expecting Caleb to follow his siblings. Instead, the boy remained seated, staring into the flames. "You should rest," Two Rivers said. Caleb shook his head. "Can't sleep during storms." "Not since—" He trailed off, but Two Rivers understood. "Since your mother died." The boy nodded, pulling his knees to his chest. It was raining then, too. Not as bad as tonight, but steady. She couldn't catch her breath. Two Rivers added another log to the fire, giving Caleb space to continue or remain silent as he chose. "I tried to go for help," Caleb said finally, his voice small. "But the creek was high. Couldn't cross. By the time I got back, she was so still." From beneath his shirt, Caleb withdrew a small object that caught the firelight, a smooth stone of deep blue, veined with white, hanging from a leather cord. "She gave me this," he said, holding it out for Two Rivers to see. right before, said it was special, that Pa brought it from the mountains when they first married. Two Rivers recognized the stone, turquoise, sacred to his people. It is powerful, he confirmed. A protection stone. Didn't protect her, Caleb said bitterly, closing his fist around it. Some journeys we must make alone, Two Rivers replied after a thoughtful pause. Even from those we love, Caleb studied him, questions forming. Like your wife and son? Two Rivers nodded, unexpected emotion tightening his throat. It had been years since he'd spoken of them to anyone. What were they like? Caleb asked, his curiosity overcoming caution. Two Rivers gazed into the fire, summoning memories he usually kept carefully buried. My wife, Morning Sky, was strong, clever with plants and healing. My son had her laugh. What was his name? Little Fox, for his quick ways. A ghost of a smile touched Two Rivers' lips. He would be older than you now. The storm's fury seemed to be passing, the thunder now more distant, though rain still drummed steadily on the roof. Do you... Caleb hesitated. Do you think they're together? Your family and my ma? The question was so innocent, so profound in its simplicity, that Two Rivers found himself without an immediate answer. My people believe spirits of those who lived well go to the western lands, he said finally. Beyond the sunset, it is a good place. Ma believed in heaven, Caleb replied, with angels and God and such. Perhaps they are the same place, Two Rivers offered. May, he called by different names. Caleb seemed to find comfort in this idea, his grip on the turquoise stone relaxing slightly. Pa said he'd come back with enough gold to make us rich, he confessed suddenly. Said there were mountains full of it up north. But the letters stopped coming. Ma said he'd found another family, one he liked better. The bitter hurt in the boy's voice was palpable. Two Rivers chose his response carefully. Some men fear what they should love, and love what they should fear. What does that mean? Your father feared responsibility, the weight of caring for others. Perhaps he loves freedom more. Freedom to forget us, Caleb muttered. His loss, Two Rivers said simply. Not yours. They sat in companionable silence for a while, listening to the storm's retreat and the fire's gentle crackling. The turquoise stone glinted in Caleb's hand. A bridge between worlds, his father's gift, his mother's blessing, now a conduit for this midnight confidence with Two Rivers. You won't leave? Caleb asked finally, the question emerging so quietly it was nearly lost in the sound of rainfall. Even if the town makes it hard. Two Rivers met the boy's gaze directly. I will stay as long as you need me. This I promise. Something in Caleb's posture eased, a tension releasing. He slipped the stone back beneath his shirt, its weight a familiar comfort against his chest. Better sleep now, Two Rivers suggested. Tomorrow we make preparations for the town meeting. Caleb nodded and rose, but paused before heading to his bed. Two Rivers? Yes? Thank you for the story, and for listening. As the boy settled beside his siblings, Two Rivers remained by the fire, turning over their conversation in his mind. The turquoise stone had been unexpected, a connection to his own culture in this cabin, so far from his people's lands. Perhaps it was a sign that despite the town's opposition, this unlikely bond was meant to be. Dawn painted the eastern sky in shades of pink and gold as Two Rivers, and Caleb slipped into the woods behind the cabin. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean. The scent of wet pines sharp in the morning air. Step where I step, Two Rivers instructed, moving silently despite the carpet of damp leaves and twigs. Listen to the forest. Caleb tried to mimic the Apache's careful movements, wincing each time his boots cracked a fallen branch. Two Rivers seemed to float over the ground, leaving barely a trace of his passing. How do you do that? Caleb whispered. Practice, Two Rivers replied. And proper tools. He gestured to Caleb's oversized boots, his father's stuffed with rags to make them fit. They reached a small clearing and Two Rivers knelt, indicating Caleb should do the same. From a bundle of items he'd brought, Two Rivers unwrapped a small bow, roughly 2 feet long, crafted from flexible hickory. The string was sinew, well-waxed and taut. Beside it lay several arrows, each fletched with turkey feathers. For you, Two Rivers said. offering the bow to Caleb. "Made it 3 nights ago." Caleb took the bow reverently, running his fingers along the smooth wood. "You made this for me?" Two Rivers nodded. "A hunter needs proper tools." The boy tested the draw, surprise registering on his face at the resistance. "It's hard to pull. Good. Builds strength." Two Rivers demonstrated the correct grip and stance. "Draw with back muscles, not just arms." For the next hour, Caleb practiced drawing and aiming, his thin arms trembling with effort as Two Rivers adjusted his form. No arrows were released yet. The focus was on technique, on building muscle memory. "Enough," Two Rivers finally said. "Arms need rest. Now we track." He led Caleb deeper into the forest, pointing out signs most would miss: a bent twig, a tuft of fur caught on brambles, the slight depression where a deer had bedded down. Caleb absorbed the lessons eagerly, his frustration with the bow forgotten as he learned to read the woodland's secret language. "There," Two Rivers whispered, pointing to fresh tracks in a patch of mud. "Deer passed at dawn, female, alone." "How can you tell?" Caleb asked. "Size of print, depth, direction of travel." Two Rivers traced the air above the tracks. "She moves toward water. We follow, but not to hunt today. Just to observe." They tracked the deer to a small stream, where Two Rivers indicated they should sit quietly behind a fallen log. After several minutes of stillness, a young doe emerged from the brush on the opposite bank. Alert, but unaware of their presence. "Watch how she moves." Two Rivers murmured, his breath warm near Caleb's ear. "How she tests the air, where she is vulnerable." The doe bent gracefully to drink, her reflection shimmering in the clear water. Caleb watched, transfixed, as the animal's ears flicked back and forth, constantly monitoring for danger. "She is beautiful," he whispered. Two Rivers nodded. "Beauty and food both. This is the way of the hunter, to respect what sustains you." After the doe departed, they continued their circuit through the woods. Two Rivers showed Caleb how to identify edible plants, which mushrooms were safe, how to find bee trees by observing flight patterns. Each lesson was delivered with patient thoroughness, building on the previous one. When they reached a ridge overlooking a small valley, Two Rivers stopped. "Enough for today. Tomorrow we return with arrows. Will we kill the doe?" Caleb asked, uncertainty in his voice. "No, she's young, may have fawn next spring. We seek older buck, one who has lived full life." Relief crossed Caleb's face. "Good, I liked her." Two Rivers studied the boy thoughtfully. "Hunting is not about liking or not liking. It is about need, respect, and balance. Take only what you require. Thank the animal for its sacrifice." As they turned back toward the cabin, Caleb's stomach growled loudly, drawing a rare smile from Two Rivers. "Seems your body understands hunting better than your mind," he observed. Caleb grinned sheepishly. "Guess so." They walked in companionable silence for a while, Caleb occasionally practicing his silent step when he remembered. The bow in his hand felt right somehow, as if it had been waiting for him. "Two Rivers," he said suddenly, "will you teach me to make things? Like this bow? If you wish to learn, I do. And other things too, like your people do." Two Rivers considered this request. Teaching Apache ways to a white child, even one of mixed blood, was unusual. Yet it felt right, this passing of knowledge that might otherwise die with him. "Yes," he agreed, "but you must be patient. Such skills take time." When they emerged from the forest near the cabin, Emma ran to meet them, excitement lighting her face. "Mrs. Donovan came by," she announced. "She brought eggs and milk and some clothes for us, and she said she's coming to the town meeting tomorrow to speak for us." "Good news," Two Rivers acknowledged, though his expression remained guarded. One ally among many opponents might not be enough. Emma's gaze fell on the bow in Caleb's hand. "What's that?" "Two Rivers made it for me," Caleb replied, a note of pride in his voice. "I'm learning to hunt." Emma's eyes widened with interest. "Can I learn too?" Before Two Rivers could respond, Caleb puffed up importantly. "Hunting is for men, Em. You gotta stay and look after the little ones." "Says who?" Emma challenged, hands on her hips in a gesture so reminiscent of her mother that Two Rivers nearly smiled. "Girls in my tribe hunt small game," Two Rivers said, settling the matter. "Birds, rabbits, Learn plants too. Important knowledge. Emma shot Caleb a triumphant look, while the boy's expression fell slightly. But, Two Rivers continued, each person has strengths. Different roles, all needed. He looked meaningfully at Emma. You have gift for caring, for seeing what others need. This too is valuable skill. Mollified, both children followed him back to the cabin where James was attempting to rock Lily in the crude cradle Two Rivers had fashioned. The boy looked up as they entered, his solemn eyes brightening at the sight of the bow. "Can I touch it?" he asked, his voice small but eager. Caleb hesitated only briefly before carefully holding out his treasure for his brother to examine. Two Rivers noted this small generosity with approval, another sign of the boy's growing maturity, as the children exclaimed over the bow. Two Rivers began preparations for their midday meal, his thoughts turning to the town meeting the next day. The small victories of the morning, Caleb's progress, Mrs. Donovan's support, seemed fragile against the weight of prejudice they would face. Yet watching the children now, seeing how they had begun to heal in these few short days, strengthened his resolve. This improvised family was worth fighting for, even against impossible odds. Sheriff Haynes arrived at the cabin mid-morning, his expression grave as he dismounted. Two Rivers met him on the porch, already dressed in his cleanest shirt, a concession to the importance of the day. "Meetings at 2 o'clock, Haynes said without preamble. "After church services," Two Rivers nodded. "I will be ready." About that, the sheriff removed his hat, turning it in his hands. "Been thinking it might be better if you didn't come." Two Rivers' face remained impassive, though his eyes sharpened. "Why? Your presence will only inflame certain parties. Make it harder to reach a reasonable decision." Haynes sighed. "Abigail Parker's been busy. Got half the town worked up about the Indian situation, as she calls it." From inside, Caleb appeared in the doorway. "If Two Rivers isn't going, I'm not going either," Haynes grimaced. "Son, that's not how this works. The meeting's about you children. You should be there." "So should Two Rivers," Caleb insisted. "He's taking care of us now." The sheriff looked between them, resignation settling on his weathered features. "Your funeral," he muttered, then caught himself. "Figure of speech. Look, if you're both determined to go, at least let me tell you what you're walking into." He reached into his vest pocket and withdrew a folded document, creased from handling. The paper bore multiple signatures, each followed by carefully penned names, a petition of some sort. "Abigail's been circulating this," Haynes explained, handing it to Two Rivers. "Calling for the immediate removal of the Tucker children to proper Christian guardianship." Two Rivers unfolded the document, scanning the neat script. The language was formal, citing moral concerns and the children's spiritual welfare. Near the bottom, in paragraph stood out, the presence of a heathen Indian in a position of authority over white children represents a dangerous precedent that undermines the social order upon which our community depends. 27 signatures, Haynes noted, including the ministers and most of the church elders. Caleb moved closer, trying to see the petition. Two Rivers carefully refolded it before the boy could read the hurtful words. "Who stands with us?" Two Rivers asked. "Ruth Donovan, for certain. Doc Wilson's keeping neutral. Says the children look healthy, that's all he cares about." "A few others might speak up." Haynes replaced his hat. "Not enough, I'm afraid." "Then why have meeting?" Two Rivers questioned. "If minds are decided." "Because this is still America," the sheriff replied. "Everyone gets their say before decisions are made. Even you." Two Rivers considered this. "The children will speak?" "If they want to. Might help, especially coming from Caleb as the oldest." The boy straightened at this, chin lifting with determination. "I'll tell them we want to stay with Two Rivers." Haynes studied him with a mix of admiration and pity. "You're a brave lad. Just remember to be respectful. These folks hold your future in their hands." 2 hours later, they arrived at the Bitter Creek Church, a white clapboard building with a modest steeple. Sunday services had concluded, but most of the congregation remained for the special meeting. Their wagon drew immediate attention as Two Rivers helped the children down. Emma had dressed Lily in her best gown, faded but clean, and had attempted to tame James's cowlick with water. The boy clung to Two Rivers' hand, overwhelmed by the crowd and the gravity of the occasion. Inside, the church was stifling despite open windows. Wooden pews faced a raised pulpit, though for this meeting, a table had been placed at the front where Reverend Thompson sat alongside Mrs. Parker and two church elders. Sheriff Haynes stood to one side, his official presence lending legitimacy to the proceedings. The congregation parted like water as Two Rivers led the children down the center aisle. Whispers followed them, some hostile, others merely curious. Ruth Donovan offered an encouraging smile from her seat near the front, her husband Thomas nodding respectfully beside her. "The children can sit here," Mrs. Parker instructed, indicating the front pew. Her gaze slid past Two Rivers as if he were invisible. "The meeting is about to begin." Two Rivers helped James onto the bench, then stepped back, understanding he was expected to remain standing. Caleb, noticing this slight, remained on his feet beside the Apache. Reverend Thompson cleared his throat, bringing the murmuring crowd to silence. "Brothers and sisters, we gather today to address a matter of concern to our community. The welfare of the Tucker children, orphaned by the sad passing of Sarah Tucker." "They're not orphans," Caleb interrupted, his voice clear in the hushed church. "Our pa's coming back, and we have Two Rivers looking after us now." A ripple of disapproval moved through the congregation at this outburst. Reverend Thompson's expression tightened. "Young man, you'll have your chance to speak. For now, please listen respectfully." Mrs. Parker rose, smoothing her black skirts. "As many of you know, I've been concerned about the Tucker children since their mother's passing. Our Christian duty compels us to ensure these innocent souls receive proper care and moral guidance." She withdrew a copy of the petition from her reticule. "I have here a document signed by 27 upstanding citizens, requesting that the children be placed with a suitable family until their father returns, if he ever does." The conditional phrasing drew sympathetic nods from many in the congregation. "Mr. Rivers," she continued, finally acknowledging his presence, while perhaps well-intentioned, lacks the moral standing and cultural background to raise these children properly. They require a Christian home with a mother and father." Ruth Donovan stood abruptly. "If I may speak, Reverend." The minister nodded reluctantly. "I visited the Tucker cabin several times since Mr. Rivers began caring for the children," Mrs. Donovan said, addressing the congregation rather than the leaders at the table. "What I've seen is remarkable improvement. The children are clean, fed, and happier than they've been since before Sarah fell ill." "Material comfort isn't everything," Mrs. Parker countered. "What of their souls, their education, their future in society?" "Two Rivers reads to us from Ma's Bible," Emma piped up, her small voice carrying in the tense room, "and teaches us about plants and animals. Says knowing how things grow is the best education." This spontaneous testimony drew mixed reactions, some smiles, others frowns of disapproval at a child speaking out of turn. Sheriff Haynes stepped forward. "As the law enforcement officer responsible for this territory, I'd like to state for the record that I've found no evidence of neglect or improper care. The arrangement, while unusual, appears to be working." "For now," Mrs. Parker interjected. "But what happens when winter comes? Or when these children need schooling beyond wilderness skills? What happens when the girl reaches womanhood with no proper female guidance?" The questions hung in the air, unanswerable yet potent. Two Rivers remained silent, understanding that anything he said would likely be twisted against him. The first snow came early that year, blanketing the countryside in white stillness before November's end. Two Rivers stood on the cabin porch, watching the children's delight as they experienced the season's first snowfall. Emma spun in circles, tongue extended to catch flakes, while James tentatively touched the white powder accumulating on the ground. Even Lily, now standing with assistance, reached pudgy hands toward the falling whiteness from her perch in Caleb's arms. Their joy was infectious, yet Two Rivers' thoughts remained weighted by the uncertain outcome of the town meeting 3 weeks earlier. The community had been divided, arguments passionate on both sides. In the end, Sheriff Haynes had negotiated a temporary compromise. Two Rivers could continue as caretaker until the territorial official arrived. A visit now delayed by the early winter weather. Each day since had been spent in urgent preparation, stacking firewood, smoking meat, patching the cabin's remaining weaknesses against the coming cold. Two Rivers had worked from dawn until dusk, teaching the children as he labored, knowing their survival depended on these preparations. Two Rivers, Caleb called, breaking into his thoughts. Look what Emma found in the trunk. The boy hurried toward him, holding a bundle of fabric. As he shook it out, Two Rivers recognized a quilt, faded but intact, its pattern a series of interlocking stars in blue, red, and cream against a navy background. Ma made it, Emma explained, joining them. For winter. She said the star pattern came from her grandmother back east. The craftsmanship was evident, despite the quilt's age, each piece precisely stitched, the backing intact with only minor wear. Two Rivers ran his hand over the surface, appreciating the work that had gone into its creation. Many hours of labor, he commented. A valuable thing. Can we use it? Caleb asked. It's getting colder at night. Two Rivers nodded. That is why it was made. That evening, the quilt spread across the children's beds, joined end to end for the occasion, transformed their sleeping area into something approaching comfort. The cabin itself had changed significantly in the week since Two Rivers had moved in. Shelves now lined one wall, holding the family's few possessions and the dried herbs and roots he had gathered. A table, fashioned from salvaged wood, stood in the center, surrounded by stumps serving as chairs. Hides stretched near the ceiling would become winter moccasins, once properly tanned. It's like a real home now, Emma observed as they gathered for the evening meal. Her eyes taking in the improvements. Two Rivers stirred the stew bubbling over the fire. It was always a home. Now it is a warm home. Will we have enough food for winter? Caleb asked, ever practical. Yes, we have prepared well. The boy had been instrumental in those preparations, learning to hunt with his bow, helping to preserve meat and gather late-season berries. His aim was improving daily, his understanding of the forest deepening under Two Rivers' patient instruction. After dinner, as snow continued to fall outside, Emma brought out her mother's Bible, one of the few books in the cabin. Though Two Rivers could read only haltingly in English, he encouraged the children to practice, listening attentively as Emma read stories aloud while he worked on moccasins for the approaching cold. Two Rivers, she asked, pausing in her reading, do your people have stories like these? He nodded. Many stories. Of creation, of animal people, of how things came to be. Will you teach them to us too? Her request was earnest, her interest genuine, if you wish to learn. I do, Emma said firmly. I want to know both. Two Rivers' hands stilled on the leather he was cutting. The child's innocent desire to embrace both. Cultural traditions touched something deep within him, a hope that perhaps these children could bridge. Worlds that adults had long kept separate. Sharp knock at the door interrupted the moment. The children froze, anxiety evident in their expressions. Few visitors came to the cabin, especially after dark. Two Rivers rose, motioning for the children to stay seated. He opened the door to find Ruth Donovan on the porch, snow dusting her shoulders and bonnet. A basket over her arm. Mrs. Donovan, he greeted her, stepping aside to allow her entry. I hope I'm not intruding, she said, stamping snow from her boots. Thomas and I were finishing our deliveries when the snow started. We thought your little ones might enjoy some gingerbread. From her basket, she produced a carefully wrapped parcel. The spicy aroma that escaped as she unwrapped it made James's eyes widen with anticipation. Very kind, Two Rivers said. Surprised by the gesture, Ruth smiled warmly at the children, who had gathered at the scent of the treat. My Thomas is waiting with the wagon. We have one more stop before heading home. She hesitated, then added in a lower voice, I wanted to let you know, Peterson, the territorial official, sent word he won't arrive until after the new year. The passes are already becoming difficult. Two Rivers absorbed this news, understanding its significance. More time with the children, more opportunity to establish their unusual family before facing official scrutiny. "Thank you for telling me," he said simply. Ruth's gaze traveled around the cabin, noting the improvements, the quilt on the beds, the orderly appearance. "You've made this place a proper home," she commented. Sarah would be pleased. As she prepared to leave, she reached into her basket once more, withdrawing a neatly folded quilt of her own making, newer than the Tucker family heirloom, but crafted with similar care. Its pattern a simple but elegant arrangement of squares in warm earth tones. "For you," she said, offering it to Two Rivers. "Everyone needs something of their own." The unexpected gift left him momentarily speechless. Among his people, such presentations carried meaning beyond mere utility. They signified acceptance, connection, respect. "Thank you," he said finally, the words inadequate for the emotion behind them. After Ruth departed, the children gathered around the gingerbread, exclaiming over the treat as Two Rivers carefully divided it into equal portions. Even Lily received a small piece which she gummed happily, sticky crumbs dotting her chin. Later, when the children were asleep beneath their star quilt, Two Rivers spread Ruth's gift on his own bed in the corner. The simple act of having something new, something given rather than salvaged or repurposed, affected him more deeply than he had anticipated. Outside, snow continued to fall, insulating the cabin against the night's deepening cold. Two Rivers added wood to the fire, listening to the children's steady breathing and the soft settling of snow on the roof. The uncertain future, Peterson's eventual arrival, the town's lingering hostility, the challenges of the winter ahead, seemed temporarily held at bay by the cocoon of warmth they had created together. For the first time in many years, Two Rivers allowed himself to feel something approaching contentment. This makeshift family, this reclaimed purpose, had awakened parts of himself he had thought long dead. Whatever came next, these moments of connection were worth protecting. Emma discovered the calendar while helping Two Rivers organize the few belongings Sarah Tucker had left behind. It was a simple thing, a single sheet of paper with months and dates printed in neat rows, the current year displayed at the top. Previous months had been crossed out in Sarah's careful hand, stopping abruptly in October when illness had claimed her. "Look," Emma exclaimed, holding up her find. "We can keep track of days again." Two Rivers examined the calendar, noting the various notations Sarah had made: market days, church socials, planting times. One date in particular had been circled several times in red ink: December 25th, with Christmas written beside it. "Ma always made Christmas special," Emma explained, her finger tracing the circled date. Even when things were hard, Two Rivers had observed the Christian holiday from a distance during his years at the edge of white society, but had never participated in its celebrations. The wistfulness in Emma's voice, however, stirred something protective in him. "Tell me of this Christmas," he requested. The children gathered around the table as Emma described their mother's traditions: a small tree decorated with paper chains and dried berries, special foods if they could afford them, simple gifts exchanged, carols sung around the fire. As she spoke, James's solemn face brightened with recognition, while Caleb's expression grew more guarded, as if afraid to hope for such pleasures again. "Will we have Christmas this year?" James asked, his voice small. 4 pairs of eyes turned to Two Rivers, who found himself suddenly responsible for this aspect of the children's heritage he barely understood. "Yes," he decided, seeing their need. "Different, perhaps, but we will honor your mother's way." Emma clapped her hands with delight, while Caleb studied Two Rivers with surprise. "You'd do that?" the boy asked. "Even though it's not your people's celebration?" "You are my people now," Two Rivers replied simply. That night, after the children slept, Two Rivers examined the calendar more closely. Emma had already taken charge of it, carefully marking off the days since her mother's last notation. According to her count, Christmas was just 16 days away. Two Rivers had never given much thought to the passage of time in white men's terms. His people mark seasons by the moon, by animal migrations, by the changing earth. This printed grid with its numbered boxes seemed an artificial constraint on the natural flow of days. Yet he recognized its importance to the children, a connection to their mother, a way to anticipate special times. The next morning, Two Rivers found Emma showing Caleb how to make paper chains from the few scraps of colored paper they had found in Sarah's trunk. "For the tree," she explained. "We need a tree first, though." Two Rivers nodded. "We will find one today." The snow had deepened overnight, reaching past James's knees as they ventured into the pine forest behind the cabin. Two Rivers carried the boy on his shoulders while Caleb helped Emma navigate the drifts. Lily remained at the cabin, bundled warmly and sleeping in the cradle near the fire. "Not too big," Caleb advised, surveying the towering pines around them. "Ma always chose a small one so it wouldn't waste." Two Rivers appreciated the boy's practical thinking, a trait they shared. "Show me what is right." After much deliberation, the children selected a young pine about 4 feet tall. Two Rivers cut it carefully, explaining to James how to thank the tree for its sacrifice, a blending of his own traditions with their purpose. The boy solemnly repeated Two Rivers' words of gratitude, his breath forming small clouds in the cold air. Back at the cabin, they secured the tree in a bucket filled with stones, positioning it in the corner furthest from the fire for safety. Emma immediately began adorning it with the paper chains, while James collected pine cones to add to the decoration. "Ma put a star on top," he informed Two Rivers. "A paper one." Two Rivers nodded, already considering how he might fashion such an ornament. His thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. Sheriff Haynes stood on the porch, stamping snow from his boots. His arms were laden with parcels wrapped in brown paper. "Thought I'd check on you folks," he said, entering at Two Rivers' invitation. "Roads are getting worse. Might be the last visit for a while." His eyes fell on the small tree and the children's decorating efforts. "Getting ready for Christmas, I see." Emma nodded eagerly. "Two Rivers is helping us do it like Ma did." The sheriff's eyebrows rose slightly, but he made no comment on this unexpected cultural accommodation. Instead, he placed his parcels on the table. "Mail came through yesterday before the pass closed," he explained. "Brought what was for you." Most of the packages were addressed to the Tucker children from the Ladies' Aid Society, a charity gesture no doubt orchestrated by Mrs. Parker. Despite her opposition to their living arrangement, Two Rivers noted the conflicted nature of the white community's response, disapproving of him as guardian, yet unwilling to see the children go without at Christmas. The final package, however, bore a different name that made Caleb freeze as he sorted through the deliveries. "It's from Pa," he said, his voice tight with conflicting emotions. The parcel was indeed addressed to Caleb, Emma, James, and baby Tucker in a slanting hand, the return address indicating a town in Montana Territory. A letter was attached, the envelope worn from its long journey. "Your father's package," Two Rivers acknowledged, careful to keep any judgment from his voice. "A good sign." Caleb's expression suggested he disagreed, but he said nothing, placing the package with the others. He made no move to open it or the accompanying letter. Sheriff Haynes watched this interaction with interest. "Looks like William Tucker's still out there somewhere," he observed. "First communication in what, 2 years?" "3," Caleb corrected flatly. The sheriff nodded, understanding the boy's reluctance. "Well, I'd best be getting back before the weather turns again." He moved toward the door, then paused, reaching into his coat pocket. "Almost forgot. Town council took a vote. The school will take all you children after the new year, if the weather permits. No charge." This announcement, delivered casually, represented a significant shift in the town's position. Schooling for half-Apache children had been denied before, especially without payment. The meeting changed minds. Two Rivers asked. Sheriff Haynes shrugged. "Some. Others just don't want to face Ruth Donovan's disappointment. Woman's got influence when she chooses to use it." After the sheriff departed, the children returned to their decorating, their excitement about Christmas temporarily overshadowing the unexpected package from their father. Only Caleb remained subdued, glancing occasionally at the parcel as if it might contain something dangerous. Two Rivers understood the boy's wariness. William Tucker's sudden reappearance, even in the form of a package, threatened the fragile stability they had established. The calendar on the wall, with Emma's careful X marks counting down to Christmas, now seemed to be measuring the time until another potential disruption to their lives. The blizzard struck 3 days before Christmas, howling down from the mountains with a fury that made the cabin walls shudder. Two Rivers had sensed its approach, a certain stillness in the air, birds falling silent, the sky taking on a peculiar yellowish cast. He had spent the previous day securing the livestock, gathering extra firewood, and ensuring their water barrels were full. By nightfall, wind-driven snow had reduced visibility to arm's length, the temperature plummeting as darkness fell. The children huddled near the fire, Emma reading aloud from her mother's Bible, while James and Lily played quietly at her feet. Caleb helped Two Rivers seal the window frames with strips of cloth, their breath visible in the corners of the cabin despite the blazing hearth. "Will Santa still come in this storm?" James asked suddenly, his small face serious with concern. Emma shot Two Rivers a worried glance, clearly wondering how he would handle this aspect of Christmas tradition. "Santa knows many trails," Two Rivers answered carefully. "Like old hunters of my people. He finds a way." This seemed to satisfy James, who returned to his play. Two Rivers caught Caleb watching him with a mixture of skepticism and appreciation for the gentle handling of his brother's beliefs. As they prepared for bed, Two Rivers noticed James moving more slowly than usual, his normally energetic demeanor subdued. When the boy stumbled slightly, Two Rivers placed a hand on his forehead, alarmed by the heat radiating from his skin. "He's burning," Two Rivers told Emma, who immediately pulled back the quilts on James's bed. "Ma always said to keep fever cool," she said, her voice tight with worry. "And give lots of water." They worked together to make James comfortable, Caleb bringing cool cloths while Emma coaxed her brother to drink. Two Rivers prepared a tea from herbs he'd gathered in autumn, willow bark for the fever, elderberry to fight illness. James sipped obediently, but shivered violently despite the cabin's warmth. By midnight, the boy's condition had worsened. His breathing became labored, his small body alternating between burning heat and alarming chills. Two Rivers recognized the signs of serious illness, similar to the lung fever that had claimed many in his village years before. "Should we get the doctor?" Caleb asked, his usual stoicism cracking under fear for his brother. Two Rivers looked toward the window, where snow still battered the glass. "Storm makes travel dangerous. We try my remedies first." Throughout the night they kept vigil. Two Rivers burned cedar and sage, filling the cabin with aromatic smoke believed by his people to drive away sickness. He placed warm stones wrapped in cloth at James's feet, sang healing songs in Apache, and continued administering the herbal tea whenever the boy was conscious enough to swallow. Nothing seemed to help. By dawn, James's breathing had become a frightening rattle, his lips tinged with blue despite the fever still raging. "He needs more than I can give," Two Rivers admitted, making his decision. "I will go for doctor." Emma, exhausted from the night's vigil, looked up from her brother's bedside. "But the storm—" "I will find a way," Two Rivers echoed his words to James about Santa, the irony not lost on him. As he prepared to leave, pulling on his warmest clothing and wrapping leggings in fur, Caleb approached with something clutched in his hand. "Take this," the boy said, holding out a small object, his mother's Bible. Worn from years of handling, its leather cover smooth with age. "For protection," Two Rivers hesitated. The book meant everything to the children, a direct connection to their mother and her faith. That Caleb would entrust it to him now revealed how desperate the boy had become. "I will bring it back," Two Rivers promised, tucking the Bible inside his clothing, close to his heart. Though not his spiritual tradition, he understood sacred objects and the power of faith. The storm had abated slightly, but the snow had drifted higher than a man's waist in places. Two Rivers chose to go on foot, rather than risk the horse in such conditions. Before leaving, he gave Emma clear instructions for James's care and placed a hand on Caleb's shoulder. "You are man of house until I return," he said solemnly. "Protect your sisters." The boy nodded, straightening under the responsibility. The journey to town was grueling. 2 Rivers forced his way through snowdrifts, following the road by memory where it had disappeared under white blankets. The Bible pressed against his chest as he walked, a strange comfort in the biting cold. Bitter Creek appeared deserted when he finally arrived, smoke from chimneys the only sign of life. 2 Rivers made his way directly to Doc Wilson's house at the edge of town. His legs numb with cold, his face raw from the wind. The doctor answered his pounding, surprise evident as he recognized his visitor. "Rivers. What in God's name?" "James," 2 Rivers managed through frozen lips. The boy, fever, bad chest. Understanding immediately, Doc Wilson pulled him inside. "Pneumonia likely. When did it start?" 2 Rivers explained the symptoms as the doctor gathered his bag and medicines. When he mentioned the storm's intensity and the remote location of the cabin, Wilson frowned. "My buggy can't make it through those drifts. We'll have to use the sleigh." He studied 2 Rivers' exhausted state. "Can you make the return journey?" "Yes," 2 Rivers said without hesitation. "Child needs help." As they prepared the sleigh, 2 Rivers felt the Bible shift inside his coat. He withdrew it, intending to leave it somewhere safe before the difficult return journey. As he did, the book fell open, a page marked by a pressed flower, a columbine, preserved between the thin sheets. Doc Wilson noticed the Bible. "Didn't take you for a religious man." "Rivers belongs to children," 2 Rivers explained. Caleb gave for journey. The doctor's expression softened. "Faith takes many forms," he observed, helping 2 Rivers secure the harness on his horse. "Seems those children have faith in you, whatever Mrs. Parker might say." The return journey passed in a blur of cold and worry. The doctor's sleigh moved faster than 2 Rivers had on foot, but the trail still presented challenges that slowed their progress. By the time they reached the cabin, the short winter day was already fading toward dusk. Emma met them at the door, her face tear-streaked but composed. "He's worse," she reported. "Can't wake him proper." Doc Wilson went immediately to James's bedside, his experienced hands examining the boy with gentle efficiency. 2 Rivers helped Caleb bring in more firewood. While the doctor worked, the Bible still tucked securely inside his coat. "Pneumonia, as I suspected," Wilson confirmed after his examination. "Dangerous in one so young, but we've caught it in time, I think." From his bag, he produced medicines and instruments unfamiliar to 2 Rivers. A stethoscope to listen to the boy's lungs, powders to reduce fever, a poultice that filled the cabin with a strong medicinal smell. "He'll need constant care for several days," Wilson instructed. "Fever should break within 48 hours if the medicine works. If not," he left the dire alternative unspoken. 2 Rivers nodded, absorbing the instructions with careful attention. "We will do as you say." Outside, the storm was gathering strength again. Doc Wilson glanced toward the window with concern. "I should start back before it gets worse." "Stay," 2 Rivers offered. "Storm is dangerous." "Shelter here." The doctor appeared surprised by the invitation but nodded gratefully. "Might be best. I can monitor the boy through the night." As Wilson settled into 10 James, 2 Rivers remembered the Bible. He approached Caleb, who sat keeping anxious watch over his brother. "Your mother's book," 2 Rivers said, returning it to the boy. It helped find the way. Caleb accepted the Bible, his fingers tracing the worn cover. "Thank you for bringing Doc Wilson," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And for bringing this back," I promised. 2 Rivers replied simply. That night, as Doc Wilson dozed in a chair beside James's bed, 2 Rivers remained awake, watching over all the children, including Caleb, who had finally succumbed to exhaustion. The Bible lay on the table where the boy had left it, open to a page of Psalms, the pressed columbine still marking the place. 2 Rivers studied the dried flower, wondering about the woman who had placed it there. Sarah Tucker remained a presence in this cabin, in these children, in the traditions and beliefs she had instilled in them. He felt no jealousy toward this continuing influence, only gratitude that her strength lived on in her children, particularly in Caleb, who had trusted him with something so precious. James's fever broke on Christmas Eve, the crisis passing as suddenly as it had arrived. Doc Wilson had departed the previous day, once the storm cleared, leaving medicines and instructions that Two Rivers followed with meticulous care. The boy remained weak but alert, his breathing easier with each passing hour. "Can I still have Christmas?" James asked from his sickbed, voice thin but hopeful. "Of course you can, silly," Emma assured him, adjusting the cool cloth on his forehead. Two Rivers and Caleb finished decorating the tree. "And I made you a present." The cabin had indeed been transformed during James's illness. While keeping vigil, the others had completed the Christmas preparations. Paper chains adorned the small pine cones hung from twine, and a star fashioned from birch bark crowned the top. Two Rivers had carved simple gifts for each child: a doll for Lily, a top for James, a set of animal figures for Emma, and for Caleb a whistle whose design had been passed down through generations of Apache boys. The mood was one of quiet celebration, joy at James's, recovery tempered by his continued weakness and the lingering worry of relapse. Two Rivers had just begun preparing a simple Christmas Eve meal when the sound of an approaching wagon reached them. Caleb tensed, moving protectively toward James. "Who'd be traveling on Christmas Eve?" Two Rivers stepped onto the porch, hand instinctively moving to the knife at his belt. A single horse pulled a weather-beaten wagon up the snow-packed trail. The driver hunched against the cold. As the vehicle drew closer, Two Rivers could make out a man in his 30s, bearded and trail-worn, but well-dressed in a city coat and new boots. The wagon halted before the cabin, and the stranger straightened, eyes widening slightly at the sight of Two Rivers. "I'm looking for the Tucker place," he called, his accent hinting at northern origins. "This it?" Before Two Rivers could answer, Caleb appeared beside him, drawn by the unfamiliar voice. The boy froze, his face draining of color. "Pa?" he whispered, disbelief and confusion warring in his voice. The man's gaze shifted to Caleb, recognition dawning. "My God, look at you, son. Grown half a foot since I left." William Tucker climbed down from the wagon, movement stiff from the cold journey. He approached the porch slowly, eyes darting between his son and Two Rivers, clearly trying to make sense of the Apache's presence. "Caleb," he said, stopping at the foot of the steps. "Is your mother home?" The simple question revealed how little he knew of what had transpired in his absence. Caleb's face hardened, years of abandonment and recent grief crystallizing into a mask of barely contained anger. "Ma's dead," he stated flatly. "Since October." Tucker staggered as if physically struck. "Dead? Sarah's dead?" His voice cracked with what seemed like genuine shock. "Why wasn't I notified?" "Notified where?" Caleb demanded. "You ain't written in 3 years. "I wrote at Christmas," Tucker protested. "Sent packages, too. Once a year don't make you a father," Caleb retorted, then turned and disappeared inside the cabin. Slamming the door behind him, Tucker stood bewildered at the foot of the steps, his gaze returning to Two Rivers. "Who are you? What are you doing at my house?" "I am Two Rivers," he replied evenly. "I care for the children since their mother died. You—" "What?" Tucker's confusion gave way to indignation. "By whose authority?" Sheriff Haynes approved. "Temporary arrangement." Tucker ran a hand through his beard, visibly struggling to process this information. "And my other children? Emma, James, the baby?" "All inside. James recovering from fever." "As well." As if summoned by the mention of her name, Emma appeared in the doorway, curious despite Caleb's obvious distress. Her eyes widened as she recognized the visitor. "Pa!" Her voice held none of Caleb's bitterness, only cautious wonder. At 8, she had been only 5 when Tucker left, old enough to remember him, but young enough that the memory had softened with time. Tucker's face brightened at the sight of his daughter. "Emma, look how you've grown, darling." Emma stepped onto the porch but maintained her distance, glancing uncertainly at Two Rivers as if seeking guidance. "Is it really you?" she asked, her voice small. "It's really me, sweetheart. I've come home." Tucker extended a hand toward her. "I've missed you so much." Emma hesitated, then moved cautiously down the steps to her father, allowing him to embrace her. Over her head, Tucker's eyes met Two Rivers, a complex mixture of gratitude and territorial challenge in his gaze. "Thank you for looking after my children," he said, the words formal but not insincere. "But I'm back now. I can take it from here." Two Rivers said nothing, understanding that this moment was not about him. He watched as Tucker released Emma and reached into his coat pocket, withdrawing a gleaming object that caught the winter sunlight. "I brought this back for your mother," Tucker explained, holding up a silver pocket watch on a long chain. "Got it engraved in Denver." The watch was indeed fine. Silver casing polished to a high shine, an ornate ST engraved on the back. He pressed the release, and the cover sprang open to reveal the watch face and an inscription inside. "To Sarah, keeper of my heart and home." Emma touched it reverently while Two Rivers observed the expensive gift, evidence, perhaps of Tucker's claimed success in the northern goldfields, but also a painful reminder of the wife who would never receive it. "She can't use it now," Emma said softly. Tucker's face fell. "No, I suppose not." He closed the watch and held it out to Emma. "You keep it then. Something to remember her by." As Emma accepted the gift, the cabin door opened again. James appeared, leaning weakly against the doorframe, with Caleb hovering protectively behind him. "Is that really Pa?" James asked, his voice thin from illness. Tucker's expression shifted to one of alarm at the sight of his youngest son's condition. "James, my God, boy, you're sick as a dog." He turned accusingly to Two Rivers. "What happened to him?" "Pneumonia," Two Rivers answered calmly. "Dr. Wilson treated." "He improves." Tucker climbed the steps, brushing past Two Rivers to reach his son. He lifted James gently, cradling him with a father's concern that seemed genuine despite his long absence. "I'm back now, son," he murmured, carrying James inside. "Everything's going to be different." Two Rivers remained on the porch, the weight of Tucker's return settling over him like a heavy snowfall. In the span of minutes, everything had changed. The children were no longer orphans, no longer his to protect and guide. Their father had returned, bearing gifts and promises, reclaiming his place in their lives. Inside, he could hear Tucker exclaiming over Lily, marveling at how she'd grown from the infant he'd last seen. Emma was showing him the Christmas tree, her excitement palpable even through the cabin walls. Only Caleb remained silent, his absence from the family reunion speaking volumes. Two Rivers gazed across the snow-covered clearing, wondering where he fit now in this altered landscape, or if he fit at all. Christmas morning dawned clear and brilliant, sunlight transforming the snow-covered landscape into a dazzling spectacle. Inside the cabin, the atmosphere was considerably more complex. Joy and tension intermingling like opposing currents in the same stream. William Tucker had spent the night in Two Rivers' corner, insisting that the Apache take the barn despite Emma's protests. The children had opened their gifts, both Two Rivers' handcrafted offerings and the store-bought toys their father had brought from his travels. Now Tucker sat at the table sipping coffee while outlining his plans. "It's a fine piece of land," he was saying, spreading a wrinkled map across the table. 200 acres near Helena. Good water timber. The house isn't large, but it's solid. Room enough for all of you." Emma looked up from the porcelain doll her father had given her. "In Montana? That's far away." "It's where our future is," Tucker insisted. "I've got claims there, business connections. We can have a real life, not this." He gestured around the cabin. Hard scrabble existence. Two Rivers stood by the window, silent but attentive. He had said little since Tucker's arrival, understanding that this reunion required space. But the talk of Montana sent a cold spike through him that had nothing to do with the winter temperature. "When would we leave?" Caleb asked, his voice carefully neutral. He alone had shown little enthusiasm for his father's gifts or plans, maintaining a wary distance that Tucker either didn't notice or chose to ignore. "Soon as James is strong enough to travel. Week or two, I reckon." Tucker folded the map decisively. I've got supplies and money enough to get us there comfortably. Caleb's gaze shifted to Two Rivers, a silent question in his eyes. What now? The answer came in the form of Sheriff Haynes, who arrived mid-morning bearing additional Christmas treats from Ruth Donovan. His surprise at finding William Tucker was evident. Well, I'll be damned, the sheriff said, accepting the offered coffee. When did you blow back into town, Will? Yesterday, Tucker replied. Come to claim my family. Take them to a better life. Sheriff Haynes glanced at Two Rivers, then at the children, assessing the changed dynamics. I see. Well, legally speaking, that's your right as their father. Damn straight it is, Tucker agreed. The sheriff removed his hat, turning it in his hands, a gesture Two Rivers had come to recognize as preceding difficult news. There's the matter of Peterson, the territorial official, Haynes said. He'll be expecting to review the children's situation when he arrives next month. Tucker waved this away. No need. I'm their father. Blood counts for everything in the law. Indeed it does, Haynes agreed carefully. Though abandonment can complicate matters, Tucker stiffened. I never abandoned my children. I was making a future for them. 3 years is a long time with only Christmas letters, Will. A tense silence followed this observation. James broke it by coughing, the sound still worryingly deep despite his improvement. Tucker immediately went to his son, concern evident in his furrowed brow. He needs proper doctors, Tucker declared. In Helena, there's a real hospital. Two Rivers finally spoke. He needs time to heal before journey. Winter travel dangerous for sick child? Tucker's jaw tightened, but he nodded reluctantly. That's why I said a week or two. I'm not a fool, Indian. The casual slur hung in the air. Emma gasped softly, while Caleb's expression hardened further. His name is Two Rivers, the boy corrected, quiet defiance in his tone. And he saved James's life. Tucker had the grace to look abashed. Right, sorry, Two Rivers. I appreciate what you've done for my children, truly. Sheriff Haynes cleared his throat. Perhaps we should discuss the practicalities. Will you be staying here until you leave? It's my cabin, Tucker confirmed. My land? From his coat, the sheriff produced an official-looking document, its edges crisp despite being folded. Actually, there's something you should know about that. The deed to the Tucker property had been a matter of concern since Sarah's death. With no will and an absent husband, the legal status of the cabin and its small acreage had remained uncertain. The document Haynes now placed on the table clarified matters in unexpected ways. Sarah paid the taxes herself these past 3 years, the sheriff explained. Put the property in her name and the children's, legal and binding. Tucker snatched up the deed, scanning it with growing disbelief. She couldn't do that. We were still married. Territory has some progressive laws about women's property rights, Haynes replied. And you were gone long enough to be legally considered to have abandoned the property, if not the family. The implications sank in slowly. Tucker no longer owned the cabin or land, his children did, with Two Rivers as their court-appointed temporary guardian. This is ridiculous, Tucker sputtered. They're minors. They can't own property. With a guardian to administer it, they can, Haynes corrected. Currently, that's Two Rivers by temporary appointment. But as their father, you could petition to become their legal guardian. Tucker's expression shifted as he calculated this new information. And then I could sell this place? Use the money to establish us in Montana? The naked calculation in his voice made even Sheriff Haynes frown slightly. That would be your right as their guardian, yes. Two Rivers watched the children's reactions to this discussion of their future. Emma looked confused and increasingly distressed. James, still weak from illness, had dozed off against Caleb's shoulder. And Caleb's eyes held a storm of emotions, chief among them betrayal. You'd sell Ma's home, the boy asked, his voice breaking slightly. Just like that? Tucker seemed genuinely surprised by his son's reaction. It's just land, Caleb, 4 walls. What matters is family being together. Ma is buried here, Caleb replied, each word deliberate. This is our home. She wanted us to have it. An uncomfortable silence descended. Tucker looked to Sheriff Haynes for support, finding none in the lawman's carefully neutral expression. He turned next to Two Rivers. You've done right by them, Tucker admitted grudgingly. But they're my blood, my responsibility. Yes, Two Rivers agreed simply. Your children. Something in his tone made Tucker study him more carefully. You care for them. Yes, but you must see they belong with me. Their father. Two Rivers did not answer immediately. He looked at each child in turn, at Emma's worried face, at James sleeping against his brother, at Caleb's silent plea for support. Finally, he returned his gaze to Tucker. Children need stability, love, respect. Each word was measured, careful. You are their father. But being father is more than blood. Tucker's face flushed with anger. You're questioning my right to my own children? After I've spent 3 years working myself half to death to provide for them. Provide what? Caleb interjected, unable to contain himself any longer. We needed you here. Ma needed you. Not money, not gifts. You. The raw hurt in the boy's voice silenced everyone. Tucker stared at his eldest son as if seeing him clearly for the first time. Not as the adoring 5-year-old he'd left behind, but as the angry, wounded 10-year-old he'd become. Sheriff Haynes cleared his throat again. Perhaps I should come back later. Give you folks time to sort things out. He placed his hat back on his head. Christmas is supposed to be about family, after all. After the sheriff departed, Tucker slumped at the table, the deed still clutched in his hand. The document that had once represented Sarah Tucker's desperate attempt to secure her children's future now stood as a final barrier between William Tucker and his plans. The days following Christmas passed in strained politeness. William Tucker made efforts to reconnect with his children, telling stories of his adventures in the gold fields, helping James regain his strength, patiently answering Emma's endless questions. Only Caleb remained distant, watching his father's performances with skeptical eyes that missed nothing. Two Rivers continued his daily tasks, chopping wood, tending livestock, hunting for fresh meat, while giving the family space to reacquaint themselves. He slept in the barn despite the bitter cold, refusing Tucker's increasingly genuine offers to trade places. On New Year's Eve, Tucker approached Two Rivers as he split logs behind the cabin. We need to talk, Tucker said, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. About what happens next. Two Rivers set down his axe, giving the man his full attention. I've been thinking about what the sheriff said. About the deed. Tucker looked uncomfortable but determined. And about what Caleb said. About selling their home. It is important to them, Two Rivers acknowledged. Their mother's place. Tucker nodded, glancing toward Sarah's grave, now a small mound beneath the snow. I loved her, you know. Despite everything, despite leaving. I always meant to come back sooner. Two Rivers remained silent, neither accepting nor challenging this claim. The thing is, Tucker continued, I've got another family waiting in Montana. The admission hung in the air between them. Two Rivers showed no surprise. He had suspected as much from Tucker's eagerness to leave quickly. A woman, Mary, and a 2-year-old son. Tucker looked away, shame finally touching his features. They're expecting me back after Christmas. Mary doesn't know about all this. The children do not know? God, no. Tucker ran a hand through his beard. How could I tell them? Especially now, with Sarah gone. Two Rivers studied the man before him, not a villain perhaps, but weak in ways that had caused deep harm. Why come back at all? Guilt, I suppose. Wanted to make things right. Tucker sighed heavily. Thought I could bring them to Montana, introduce them as my children from my first marriage. Make one big family. The naivety of this plan was breathtaking. Two Rivers thought of Caleb's perceptiveness, his fierce protection of his siblings. It would not work. No, Tucker agreed, surprising Two Rivers with this self-awareness. I see that now, especially with Caleb. Boy's got his mother's way of seeing right through a person. A crow called from a nearby pine, the sound sharp in the winter stillness. Tucker seemed to take it as a prompt to continue. I can't stay here, Rivers. My life is up north now. But I can't just leave them again either. He met Two Rivers' gaze directly. They need someone who'll put them first. Someone who already has. Understanding dawned. You would leave them here? Tucker nodded slowly. if you're willing to continue as their guardian. Legally this time, permanently. Two Rivers absorbed this proposal, careful not to reveal the surge of emotion it provoked. The law allows this? Apache raising white children? Half-Apache, Tucker corrected, echoing Two Rivers' own words from months ago. And yes, with my written consent as their father. Sheriff Haynes confirmed it yesterday. From inside his coat, Tucker withdrew a folded set of papers, official documents with multiple signature lines and the territorial seal impressed at the bottom. Adoption papers, prepared by the county clerk at Tucker's request. You've been more of a father to them these past months than I've been in years, Tucker admitted, the words clearly difficult for him. They trust you. Even Caleb, and that boy doesn't trust easily. Two Rivers accepted the documents, their weight seemingly greater than the few sheets of paper would suggest. The children must agree. Of course. It's their lives. Tucker hesitated, then added, I'd still send money for their schooling, for whatever they need. And letters, regular ones this time. Why? Two Rivers asked simply. Tucker considered the question. Because despite everything, they're still my blood. And because it's the right thing to do. They brought the proposal to the children that evening, gathered around the fire as snow began falling again outside. Tucker explained his decision with more honesty than Two Rivers had expected, omitting only the existence of his second family. Two Rivers would be your legal guardian, he concluded. You'd stay here in your home, just as your mother wanted. The silence that followed was profound. Emma looked bewildered, James confused. But Caleb's expression shifted from suspicion to cautious hope. You're leaving again, the boy said, a statement rather than a question. Tucker nodded, shame evident in his posture. Yes, but this time I'm trying to do right by you, by all of you, by giving us away. Emma's voice trembled. No, sweetheart, by making sure you're with someone who'll never leave, someone who's proven he'll walk through blizzards for you, who'll teach you what you need to know, who'll respect your mother's memory. Two Rivers watched the emotions play across the children's faces, hurt, confusion, understanding. He remained silent, knowing this decision must be theirs. Would you still be our pa? James asked in a small voice. Always, Tucker assured him. Nothing changes that. I'd write regularly, visit when I can, but Two Rivers would be your guardian. The one who takes care of you day to day. Caleb looked directly at Two Rivers. Is this what you want? The question's simplicity belied its depth. Two Rivers considered his answer carefully. I want what brings you peace, safety. If that is with me, then yes, I want this. The children exchanged glances, some unspoken communication passing between them. It was Caleb who finally spoke for all of them. We want to stay, he said firmly. With Two Rivers, Tucker nodded, relief and regret mingling in his expression. Then it settled. He placed the adoption papers on the table. We'll make it official tomorrow. The next morning dawned clear and cold. Sheriff Haynes arrived with the county clerk, both men solemn in recognition of the unusual proceeding about to take place. Ruth and Thomas Donovan came as witnesses, bringing freshly baked bread and supportive smiles. The paperwork was signed with appropriate gravity, Tucker relinquishing his parental rights, Two Rivers accepting guardianship of all 4 children, the adults witnessing this legal transfer of responsibility. Through it all, the children watched wide-eyed, understanding that something momentous was occurring when the official documents were complete, bearing all required signatures and seals. The county clerk cleared his throat. According to territorial law, these children are now legally in the guardianship of Two Rivers, formerly of the Chiricahua Apache. Their surname remains Tucker, honoring their parentage, but in all legal matters, Two Rivers acts with full parental authority. Sheriff Haynes shook Two Rivers' hand, then Tucker's. Never seen anything quite like this, he admitted. But I believe it's the right thing for these children. After the officials departed, Tucker prepared for his own leave-taking. He embraced each child, making promises of letters and eventual visits that Two Rivers hoped he would keep. When he reached Caleb, the boy's reserve finally cracked. Why couldn't you just stay? Caleb asked, the question holding all his years of hurt. Tucker knelt to his son's level. "Because I'm not the man your mother deserved, or the father you deserve. But I'm trying to do one right thing by leaving you with someone better." He placed something in Caleb's hand, the silver pocket watch he had brought for Sarah. "Keep this. Remember that even flawed people can love truly." As Tucker's wagon disappeared down the snowy track, the children stood with two rivers on the porch. A new kind of family formed in the crucible of loss. Chance and choice. "What happens now?" Emma asked, her small hand finding two rivers. "Now we live," he answered simply. As family, that evening, two rivers gathered the children outside despite the cold. Above them, stars pierced the velvet darkness in their thousands, the winter constellations brilliant in the clear mountain air. "My people have ceremony," he explained, "for new beginnings, new families." From a pouch at his waist, he took a pinch of sacred herbs and cast them into the small fire he had built in the yard. Fragrant smoke rose toward the stars as he began to sing in Apache, a song of belonging, of protection, of bonds stronger than blood. One by one, he placed his hands on each child's head, speaking their name, followed by words they did not understand, but somehow felt. When he reached Caleb, the boy surprised him by speaking up. "Teach me the words," Caleb requested. "I want to learn your ways too." Two Rivers nodded, a rare smile warming his weathered features. Together, they spoke the final blessing, the Apache words and English meaning intertwining like streams, joining to form a river. Above them, the stars continued their ancient dance, witnessing this unlikely family forged not through blood but through choice. A hungry boy's desperate plea and an Apache warrior's unexpected answer, creating something neither could have imagined that dusty day outside the general store.